Trying to decide on what to play can be a daunting task. There are many factors that you need to consider. Now, normally when someone asks me what they should play, the obvious answer is try a bunch of specs and see what you enjoy. Now, this is solid advice, and I still always recommend it, but what if you enjoy a bunch of stuff? Maybe you don't mind playing something that's in high demand, or maybe you enjoy playing things that are just flavor of the month. Either way, I'm going to highlight the best specs that you can play for Mythic Plus, and mention some of the ones you probably should avoid. Now, for a disclaimer, I just want to say that this isn't a tier list video. We're not going to be covering every single spec in this game, so if I don't mention your spec, then I apologize. This video is more catered towards, if you're looking for a spec to play that you want to actually get invited to groups with or push high keys with, then this is the video for you. So with that being said, one last thing that I'd like to say is that if you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it, as well as subscribing to the channel for more awesome content like this in the future. At the top of the list, it's hard to ignore the dominance of Protection Warriors. With the highest representation of tanks across all keys, it's clear that Prot Warriors are the go-to choice for many players. This has been the case since the start of the season, and it's easy to see why. Prot Warriors have excellent mitigation and damage, making them incredibly versatile in every situation. That being said, there has been a recent shakeup in the tank meta, thanks to some key changes in the patch 10.0.5. Protection Paladins have seen a massive increase in popularity since the recent buffs, and it's not hard to see why. 8 of the top 10 tanks in Mythic Plus are Prot Paladins, thanks to their impressive survivability, damage, and excellent crowd control. Given the popularity of both Prot Warriors and Prot Paladins, it's safe to say that either of these tanks are a solid choice for tanking Mythic Plus. However, it's worth noting that the other tanks like Guardian Druids or Brewmasters aren't as popular in the current meta. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're weak or ineffective, but it does mean that players looking to push high-level keys may want to focus on other options. Now let's talk about the melee DPS. So at the top of my list, I actually have 6 contenders here. So it's the Subtlety Rogue, Outlaw Rogue, Havoc Demon Hunter, Enhancement Shaman, Fury Warrior, and Windwalker Monk. So now what I'm saying here is that if you guys were looking to play melee DPS and want to push Mythic Plus, any 6 of these specs you guys cannot go wrong with. They all excel at AoE, have great cooldowns, great utility, and survivability to some extent. And if you wanted to narrow that down to even further, I would say Havoc Demon Hunters, Enhancement Shamans, and Outlaw Rogues are the top 3 overall best melee DPS to play in the game right now. And then as far as what specs I would avoid playing if you want to push high keys, I would say Survival Hunters, Frost Death Knights, and Assassination Rogues are all not doing very well. And then just real quick, I want to talk about the one outlier here, and that's Ret Paladins. So Ret Paladins had been doing really bad as far as DPS goes in Mythic Plus, and then recently in the last patch, they actually got a pretty big buff in their damage, and looking at it now, they're actually doing pretty well. But then also, they're getting a huge rework next patch, so I would say that the Paladin stonks are probably going to be super high. So if you guys are kind of like looking for that sleeper spec, I would say Ret Paladins probably not a bad spec to invest in. So now let's talk about the ranged DPS. And the first thing I want to mention with ranged is that if you guys are looking to push Mythic Plus, it's definitely a lot easier to do that as a melee DPS because you just have way more options. And it's just a season of melee right now. Like for ranged, the only spec that's just, hands down doing amazing right now is either Balanced Druids or Shadow Priests. If you look at clearing plus 25 keys and up, Balanced Druids take up 23% of the population, and Shadow Priests are 25%, with the next closest one of Frost Mages being 11.9%. And as far as the rest of the specs for ranged goes, they're all doing okay I guess, but I will say the ones that I would avoid like the plague are Affliction Warlocks, Arcane Mages, and Elemental Shamans. Those 3 specs alone are just doing really bad right now. And now let's talk about the healers. So for healers, it's pretty cut and dry. The 2 kings of healing are Restoration Druids and Preservation Evokers. Both of these guys have been the best healers for the entire season, and it seems like it's going to stay that way. If you guys are looking to heal and you want to get invites to all the groups, then either of these specs are a no-brainer. And then as far as the other healing specs, they're all pretty even as far as, where they're looking at performance-wise, but the one healing spec that I would say probably not play is Mistweaver. Mistweaver is just, it sucks because they're always like this every single expansion. They're just, Blizzard doesn't know what to do with them. And while it's helpful to know which classes and specs are considered the strongest for each role in Mythic Plus, it's important to note that these recommendations are typically geared towards players who are trying to push higher keys. If you're someone who just enjoys playing the game and you don't necessarily feel like or need to push high keys, then feel free to play just whatever you guys enjoy. And it's true that in certain cases, some specs are going to be easier to succeed in higher keys than others, but at the end of the day, your enjoyment and comfort with your class and spec is what's most important. If you're having fun playing a particular spec, you're more than likely to play better and perform well in a group. Additionally, as you progress through the lower keys and learn more about the mechanics of the dungeons, you guys may find that you will succeed with most classes and specs that are not considered meta or top picks. It's always worth trying out different specs and see what feels comfortable. In short, it's good to be aware of which classes and specs are considered the strongest for Mythic Plus. Don't feel like you have to adhere strictly to these recommendations. If you're not pushing high keys, feel free to play whatever you guys enjoy. Ultimately, the most important thing to do is to have fun and enjoy the game. And before you go, be sure to check out my other channel where I make videos on non-WoW related video games. I only have about 9 subscribers over there right now, so if you guys would do me a favor and check it out, it would make my day. I also put out a video on Diablo 4's open beta, so if you guys want some more Diablo 4 content, I will be posting all of that stuff on that channel in the near future. But either way, what are you guys' thoughts on Mythic Plus? Let me know what specs you guys are currently enjoying and why. Thank you so much for checking out my video, and I will see you guys later.